For me, coming from Germany with our special history, and I'm afraid my speech might cause strains and be emotionally disturbing for some of you, as it was to Dana Roth, whom I met last year in Vienna, and who, poor Dana, had to hold the next speech, and it was quite hard for her. Nevertheless, I think Pat was very right when he said you can't make things diminish while not talking about them. So we try to talk about our special history during the NS era, where not only Jews and Romans and homosexuals were persecuted and murdered, but also people with disabilities and mental health problems. And their situation is still known too little in Germany. Last year, the memorial in Tiergartenstraße, where they started the murders, was opened, and our students, teaching education students, going into special and inclusive education, they know, but normal population just comes to think about this subject. And there is, as Alistair pointed out, a continuity of discrimination. On the other hand, there's a large interest of students in historical and ethical issues, which is very good. And we have the UN Conventions on the Rights of People with Disabilities, which marked a paradigm shift. Persons with disabilities are not viewed as objects of charity, medical treatment, and social protection anymore, rather as subjects with rights who are capable of claiming those rights and make decisions. And this poses some pressure on us as university lecturers to think about other means in teaching as well.
You think I could take this off?
I will try to shorten this section a little. We will give you the slides so you can read it for yourself. There is a growing body of research that has identified positive attitudes as being very, very important, and that pre-service training may be a good time to address teachers' concerns. This is my field of work, that's why it is important, and on our university, which is a technical university, one of the large German technical universities, which is quite white and non-disabled and male still, the teacher education and the subject of diversity is becoming more important at the moment. So we have given it a lot of thought how to provide appropriate training for teachers to go into inclusive schools, because they are seen as experts for inclusion, but they are not. Maybe they are experts on disabilities, but not on inclusion. That's what people with disabilities and their families are. And the special school settings we still have in Germany, about 70% of children and youth with disability attend them, less in primary school, more in secondary education. They tend to lower expectations and suggest that students are less able to learn. And few of our students have own experience with mixed group settings. Therefore, we try to provide at least single experiences, because there is empirical proof that that might change attitudes, but it may confirm attitudes as well. So you have to provide meaningful contact, and that's what we try. I would like to see our project in the context of the UN Convention, and especially Article 8, Awareness Rising. It's not just doing a nice project, and at our university, I still have to explain that quite often. But to you, I don't have to explain, probably. The project aims are, of course, more knowledge on exclusion, forced sterilization, and murder, experience with group learning in a mixed group, an own reflected view regarding exclusion, discrimination, the value of life, and the so-called euthanasia crimes, which is very important to be a lobbyist, either as a teacher or as a person without university access and an ID, and getting in touch with a group you seldom see in your life in Germany still. We work a lot on the life stories of the students and the stories of victims, of helpers, and so on. We'll skip that. This is the project. We started in 2012, and at the moment the 4th term is running. The students attended a 2-hour lecture on Holocaust education in primary schools, because there is a large discussion on that in Germany in this field of historical knowledge for primary education as well. And the adults without university access, whom we invite to attend, usually we recruit them via German day centers, which still exist. They meet 2 days to get used to university, because most of them are quite afraid to go to such a high-level learning arrangement. We work on the general historic knowledge, and we work on one victim story, which I will present. And then the groups join, and we work together on different subjects and prepare the trip to Hadamar, which is a memorial dedicated to the memory of victims of the Nazi euthanasia crimes. The only memorial where you have the original rooms still left. These are 2 slides of Anna's life story. Anna's niece found out about her. She wanted to know who her aunt was and tried to break the silence in her family too. She's in her 70s now. Now Anna would be 100 years within a few days. The book, Anna's niece made a big book, and we changed it to an easy language book to work with our groups. And this is an impression. We translated a few pages of it. This is material from the group works. We have to work partly with children's books as well, because there is very little material in easy, accessible language. But we get better in presenting material which is adequate for adult learners. These are examples of victims' biographies the students worked on in mixed groups. They tried to use accessible, easy language, and they tried to several ways of approaching. Some of these, if there are Germans or German-speaking people in the room, they tried to write it from the perspective of the people themselves. So it's Richard's thoughts here, Richard's probably what he might have thought, and Christa's life story, which started with, "I am Christa." So it's not historically correct, but it's a way of identifying with their story. These are children's books. They were presented by the students in accessible language as well. There's a lot of books in Germany, and you can work with them quite well. They're getting better. There used to be quite a lot of stereotypes as well in the first books which appeared on the market. And we worked during this year. The students are allowed to choose their subjects themselves, so it depends on their interests. This year they worked on biographies of staff and helpers, like a bishop who tried to stop the murders and things like this, but it's not in a presentable way up to now. We did research on that as well and tried to find out quite a few things. I only present the main findings. The group experience was extremely important and positive. That is very important because it's such an emotional subject. The blue sentences are voices of the students and those who study teaching and those who just attend without university access. The group was great. They said everybody gave and received support when needed. All of us needed support at the same stage. There, everybody felt better than I ever experienced with a homogeneous students group, university students groups. And we work harder on that subject. We never asked the students before what they needed to feel well in an emotional situation, but we do now for all students. I always said when I did the lecture on these historical issues, tell me if you need a break, tell me, go out if it's getting too hard for you, but we never worked that intensively on what people need to feel good in spite of sad things they work on. And this is one of the things we have to bear in mind to reach an inclusive society. It gets better for all of us. And this is an example from that. There is reduced fear to mix. Both students and learners with disabilities come to the seminar with fears. They don't know how to treat each other. They are insecure whether, especially the teaching students, they are insecure whether they will act in the right way, and there's a lot of pressure on them. And they are, there's always one person who asks, what would have happened to me? Or, but my granddad died last year, and I think it was good that we let him die. Is that euthanasia? And it's never the students, the normal university students. It's always the people with disabilities who are brave enough to ask these questions. And that leads to much better, more open, and more in-depth discussions than I ever had before with the university group, who are very politically correct and try to think the right things and say the right things, not to be laughed at and so on. So nearly every one of them says things like, we spoke very openly, I was impressed by what people said about being discriminated against. That's something else. In every group we had up to now, Anna's story of being in a special school and getting a forced sterilization against her will, moving to an institution and then being murdered, caused people with disabilities to tell about their lives. And there are hard lives sometimes. People taken away from their families quite early, not knowing who their siblings are in the 70s, just after they were born, or falling out of the window at the age of 4 on the 4th birthday. Just now in our group, there's a guy, this happened to him, and he came with a Jesus is Boss t-shirt to the first occasion. And in the very secular North German Hanover, this is bewildering to the students. That's strange, more strange perhaps than his disability or impairment. And when he told this story, and he told that his brother at the age of 2 went to fetch his mother, who was in the kitchen doing the birthday cake, and that he doesn't think, that he thinks God must have loved him, but because otherwise he wouldn't have survived, then people come to know each other in a way they seldom do at university. And the students appreciate that very much. Still, the group work is challenging sometimes. We had one guy who came from Syria, and I never understood fully what he could understand in German and what he didn't understand, and what was limited cognitive possibility and what was limited speech, limited language. We talk a lot in inclusive education about a two-group theory, which should be abolished. And we realize that this happens, but on the basis of acknowledgement that there are two groups in the beginning, because there are different biographies, different chances to lead your own life. The gain of self-confidence in both groups is great, and the gain of knowledge, this is what the students said, they are the only ones to compare, is larger than in other seminars. Not only on the subject itself, but on how to organize group work, assist, provide material, and so on, and to use easy language, which is very important. Because first we teach the students to use university language, and then we want them to be able to be good teachers in inclusive schools, which doesn't really work. This is our project. We go to this trip to Hadamar in the end of July again. Maybe we are going for the last time to Hadamar, but we will find another way, because people coming to Europe to seek for asylum are to be hosted there from August onwards, which is very sad, and which shows, I'm quite sure they couldn't have found other room for them. It shows again that the work which is done at Hadamar is not that important to the public. And this is a little bit sad at the moment to us, but we will find other ways. And it shows us that we have to promote our work much more to make people see that it is important and it's worth doing, and that there is a strong connection to what Alistair told us before. Thank you very much.